Hi, I'm Scott Noonan, the CEO of Audio Advice. If you're watching this video, it is likely that you are a happy new owner of a brand new Dirac-enabled home theater receiver or stereo preamp. Congrats on your purchase. With Dirac, you have an incredibly powerful tool at your disposal. Several years ago, I made a video on how to set up Dirac, and it quickly became the #1 watched setup video in the world for Dirac. Since then, Dirac has progressed substantially, so we decided it was time to update our setup video with this one. First, let me orient you to the different versions of Dirac. Bear in mind that different equipment either comes with different levels of Dirac Live software licenses or is Dirac Live-enabled, meaning the equipment is capable, but you need to purchase a license from the Dirac website or upgrade the current license that came with it. Most people will start by using Dirac Live Limited Bandwidth. This will set the distances, gains, and improve impulse response in general room EQ from 20 Hz to 500 Hz. This is the most important range to cover. An upgrade to this version is the full bandwidth version, which will do the same thing but adjust all the way from 20 Hz to 20 kHz. Then, if you want to go up a level even higher, you can add Dirac Live Bass Control, which also sets its own crossover and phase aligns your subs with the mains and each other. Bass control is available for either one sub or multi-sub. These are largely all done the same way, both in theater and two-channel equipment. So I will walk you step by step how our team does it both on-site for customers and if we are remoting into a system and doing it with a DIY home theater customer who purchased through audioadvice.com. Before shooting this video, I talked extensively with the team at Dirac to integrate both our and their best tips and tricks into this setup guide. You can see here that I'm in one of our labs where we test speaker location and calibration impacts on sound performance. I'm going to jump to my computer in the lab and show you as I walk through. Okay, so first set up your receiver or processor as you always would, setting exact speaker configuration, distances, and levels. Technically, you could skip setting distances and levels as Dirac will replace them with its calculated values, but there are a few advantages of setting them. For instance, if you turn Dirac off for some reason, and it can make sure your subs and speakers are at reasonably matched levels before you start. A few quick pro tips here. Always first go set a maximum volume level on your processor, maybe at 90% so your system is protected if someone accidentally sits on the volume control or something else happens. Also, if your subwoofers have room equalization, go ahead and run your room EQ on them, but make sure the crossover on your sub is turned off through the entire process, as you're going to use the processor for crossing over. Finally, set the crossover in your home theater processor. For 95% of theaters, you're going to want to set the crossover in your theater to 80 Hz, even if you have large front speakers, so that you can leverage the power of your subs and get the most out of your other speakers. If you know that you have full bandwidth speakers with enough amplification, you can set it a little lower. Next, set up your room as you would normally use it. For instance, if curtains will be closed and your chair is reclined while you watch or listen, then do that. Now, turn off all HVAC, fans, or other extraneous noises so you can minimize the noise floor in the room. If you have a loud projector directly overhead, turn that off too. Next, go to Dirac Live, create a login, and download the current Dirac Live software for your computer. The software does not automatically download new versions, so go make sure you have the latest version to get the best experience. Before you open the Dirac Live software, make sure your theater system is turned on and set the input on your system to an analog input. There are a few devices where if you have the input set to an HDMI input, you could end up getting clicks instead of pink noise when you set your volume levels in Dirac. So choose an input on your processor that is CD or anything that has analog inputs to avoid this edge case issue. Make sure that your computer is on the same network as your theater processor. Then go ahead and plug in the microphone that came with the processor or a mic or something equivalent into your computer. Now open Dirac Live and log in. You should now see your theater or stereo device show up on your network and choose that device. In this example, you see me choosing the JBL Synthesis processor. Next, you will be taken to the page where you choose your microphone. Look for the microphone that you connected. You should have received a calibration file for your microphone with your purchase, or you can find it at the manufacturer website for your equipment. You right-click below the microphone to load the calibration file. It's important to load this calibration file to receive accurate results. If you're using a mic type of microphone, be sure to upload the 90-degree file, which is the correct one for when the microphone is sitting straight up. Now click Proceed to Volume Calibration. The goal in this step is to set the volume level of the speakers for the calibration. There's often confusion about this step, so let me give you the theory that you are following. Ideally, you want to calibrate using the volume level that you would typically listen at. The reason is that speakers have different frequency response curves at different volume levels. We're also trying to have a relatively high signal to noise ratio, meaning the signal from the speakers compared to the noise floor that you've already tried to minimize in the room by turning all extra sounds off. You also want all the speakers set to a similar level within about 3 dB of each other. To do this, set the master volume low so you don't risk hurting a speaker. Leave the microphone at 100% and note what it tells you the noise floor is in the room when it's perfectly quiet. In this case, around -60 dB. Then play one of your speakers and slowly move up the master volume to a reasonable listening level so you can see the level of the speaker. Another quick pro tip, if for some reason you don't get a sound when you click play below a speaker, just stop that speaker, move to a different one and come back. At this point, quickly play each of your speakers to see which speaker or speakers have the lowest gain. Most of the time, it will be your surrounds or heights. Then slowly move the master volume up until that speaker reaches your expected normal listening level. If you're not sure, then target somewhere around 30 dB louder than the noise floor. So in my case, that would be around -30 dB, which is 30 dB higher than the -60 dB noise floor. Once you've got the quietest speaker up to that level, now all you have to do is pull down the individual speaker gains of all the other speakers to get them all approximately the same level. Once all speakers are pretty close in level, click Proceed to select arrangement. Don't get too worked up about these different arrangements, as it's really just telling Dirac how many measurements you're going to take. For simplicity here, do it like this. If this is for a 2-channel system where you are always going to be in one spot, then choose tightly focused imaging. If you have a theater room where you really are focused on 1 or 2 key seats for the calibration, then choose focused imaging. If you have multiple rows or lots of seats that you want to balance the best sound across, then choose wide imaging. A key point here is that you might have 2 rows of 4 seats each, but 95% of the time it's just 2 people watching in the 2 middle back row seats. If you really care more about those, then choose the middle option here and focus your measurements on those. If your processor has 2 or more filter slots, you could do one calibration for those 2 seats and then do another one for all the seats if you wanted to. But most people want to really focus on some select seats. Now don't get too worried here about which you pick. It's more about measuring the right spots. Now click Proceed to measure. Make sure everything is perfectly quiet in the room before you start to measure. The first measurement is the most important, is the middle circle in there, and you want to put the microphone exactly where your ears will be in the main listening position. Let me demonstrate in a theater room for you. Okay, so if your system came with a puck mic like this, you really are probably just going to put them in the main listening chair and you're going to set it. Now look, I've reclined the chair and set everything up exactly as how it would be when people are listening. And this will start the first position that you'll use for setting your levels. If you have a stick mic like you see here, this is U mic 2, we're going to do the same thing, and obviously we can get a little bit closer to where the ears are. Again, everything is laid back and sitting here. When you set the very first position, that is the most important. So you'll see I've got my U mic 2 sitting right here where the ears would be. Everything is reclined the way it normally would be. If it didn't want it reclined so much or reclined a little more, I would change all these to set it up. But that's the first one we're going to run it. Now, most of the time, people get really confused about where does the mic go after the first one. And you see all these circles here and people get caught up and moving it all around. Let me get you into the theory of it for a second. What you're trying to do is put the microphone in various levels, forward, backwards, sideways, and up and down that are corresponding to where your ears would be. So most of the time people get confused and they look at the bubbles, and I've actually talked to Dirac about this and said it's really confusing a lot of people. And they think that the microphone needs to go, way up here. That's nowhere near where your ears would be. That's not what you need to be doing. Or they think the front left one should be way down here. So what we're really trying to do is get them around the listening spot, because you might have a taller person, so we might need to get a higher measurement that's, sitting up here, and maybe the seat is inclined forward more, or we need a little bit of a lower measurement over here. Maybe we've got a shorter person, I want to bring it down, or maybe all the way back. So what you're trying to do is with the chairs forward and back is to get the levels of shorter and higher people of what you care about the most. That's the concept. Let me mention here the two most common errors we get calls about. The first is clipping. This happens when a speaker is playing too loud for the measurement. Identify which speaker that is and turn it down a little bit. That usually will fix it. Or it could happen when you're taking a measurement too close to a speaker. So for instance, maybe in a side seat right next to a speaker. Just back off a little from that speaker for the measurement. The second is too low signal to noise ratio. This happens when the system can't get a good measurement because the system is not loud enough compared to the noise floor. You fix this first by turning off any noise in the room. If that does not work, then bring up the gain a little. That should fix it. Now, click on each of the measurement circles and click to measure each position. If it's only 1 or 2 seats, you can get away with 5 to 7 measurements with small incremental gains for more. Try to stay a foot away from any walls if you can. The circles showing you where the measurements go are just spots to make sure you cover up, down, forward, back, and side to side. The order in which you do it does not matter, and it doesn't impact the measurement. Remember that it's averaging every new measurement, so don't start putting the microphone in crazy places to hit the recommended number. Once you've got it reasonably covered, click Proceed to Filter Design. If you did not do the recommended number of measurements, as you'll see here in my example, and I just wanted to show you really quickly 3 measurements and keep moving, you will get a pop-up confirming that you want to move forward. As long as you have more than 5 measurements, just click to move forward to Filter Design. Dirac has progressed substantially in this section. You will see that it has grouped your speakers naturally, such as putting the front left and rights together. What is really cool now in Dirac is that it attempts to create a great curve for the natural output of your room and speakers, whereas previously you had to do that yourself. For the vast majority of folks using Dirac Live without bass control, you can literally click Proceed to Filter Export here and try your new filter in your system. A common experience of people is that once they run room calibration, they sometimes think they lost bass compared to with no calibration. This usually happens because there is a natural bass peak in your room that has been way too loud and dominates the other frequencies, but you've been feeling that high peak impact. Once the calibration is done, the peaks are leveled out and the bass is much tighter and smoother and accurate. However, because that peak is gone, you may perceive it as less bass. The other thing that happens is that the total SPL or loudness of the system is reduced at the same volume setting on your receiver or processor because the peaks have been reduced. So if you're used to listening at, let's say, a volume percentage of 70%, you may now need to have the volume percentage set to 73% to achieve the same SPL in the room. I encourage homeowners to live with this for a while, and you'll usually find it way better because the bass is cleaner and tighter, and it's also not fatiguing like you'll find from big muffled bass peaks. If you feel you still want more bass, there are 2 great ways to get it. The first is to simply pull up the handle on the left, which you see me doing here, which will adjust the curve based on your system. You can do this up or down for the bass handle, or go over to the right and do it on the high frequency side as well. This has become so good and is customized to your particular system that it is now my recommended way for most people. The other option is to create or upload your own curve. Audio Advice has calibrated so many theaters now that we created our own curves based on the known science and our practical experience from what customers prefer in their homes. If you purchase your system from Audio Advice, you should have gotten an email with the Audio Advice curves that make most rooms sound incredible. To load one of those curves, you simply click the menu bar at the top left and choose Load Target Curve. It will ask you which set of speakers to apply it to. Choose all groups so that you will have the same curve to all speakers. Even though some speakers are bigger or smaller, the crossover that you used when you set your system up will do its work here. Then navigate to one of the saved curves on your computer. The Audio Advice curves are named with the amount of bass gain added, so if you like more bass, choose one with a higher number. Click Open and it will apply the curve. Dirac Live will then calculate the corrected curve and has built-in limits such that the max filter gain is 10 dB, so you don't try to push your speakers too hard. Even with this max, be smart and don't go make adjustments so high upward that are beyond the capability of your speakers. If you have one small subwoofer in your room, don't try to push the bass up by 10 dB. If for some reason you want to have Dirac Live only adjust between certain frequencies, you can pull the left curtain, as you see me doing here, to the right, which tells it not to adjust anything below that curtain. Or you can grab the curtain on the right and pull it to the left, and it won't adjust anything to the left of the curtain. I don't recommend expanding the curtains outward. In other words, don't take the left one to the left or the right one to the right unless you're an expert, as they are based on the capability of your speakers. If you want a more lively but less tight or room-corrected sound in the upper frequencies, you can pull the right curtain down to say 5 kilohertz. That will prohibit Dirac from adjusting frequencies over 5 kilohertz. If your system is capable of bass control, then you will see bass management as an option, as you see here. If you have Dirac bass control, just skip bass management. If you don't have bass control, then you would really only use bass management if you want to set different crossovers than what you did in the processor originally. In Dirac Live, it crosses over wherever you told it to when you originally set up your processor. With bass management and bass control, it actually calculates the suggested crossover, which you can then adjust up or down, and the crossover in Dirac then overrides the crossover you originally put in your receiver. Now let's move on to bass control. You will find that Dirac bass control takes the system to another level by time and phase aligning all of your subs with the mains and with each other. For a stereo setup with 2 subwoofers, I would invest in bass control if you have the budget. For theaters, using it for 2 subs is helpful, but anything more than 2 subs, it really shines. If you have bass control, click on it in the top right. It calculates the suggested crossover, which currently has a minimum of 70 Hz by default, even though you can manually move it up or down after it's set. I've talked with the team at Dirac and made a compelling argument as to why they should allow it to go lower, or better yet, remove the crossover when you have full range speakers and utilize the combination of the subs and full range speakers to produce the best bass. I think they generally agree, and we will likely see this upgrade in the software in the future. For now, I would follow the same steps as I described for Dirac Live. Either use the side handle to increase bass sum, for most situations targeting 3 to 4 dB extra, or load a curve like the audio device curve. Be sure to click Calculate at the bottom right before exporting bass control filter, as it requires a lot of calculation once you make any changes. For most people, this is all you need to do. If you're a professional in the business and you want to go to the next level, you can test different curve gains and crossover levels. Click Calculate and then take a snapshot. Be sure to edit the name of the snapshot to whatever you changed. I generally include the bass gain and crossover level in the name. This way you can take several snapshots, then export them to your processor, and then come back and make adjustments to any of the snapshots. Many Dirac-enabled devices allow you to load multiple filters. Now, why would you want to do this? Well, you might have one filter that is a tight set of measurements around just one listening chair that you use all the time. Then you might have a second filter that includes more measurements for when friends are over and the curtains are open and it's, say, the Super Bowl kind of setup. You get the point. It's extremely powerful. The final thinking you want to do is to save your project so you can come back later and make adjustments if you ever want to. Look, I hope this setup guide has been super helpful to you. If you're looking to get the very best out of your home theater or 2-channel system, you can find other great setup guides like this one and all sorts of audio and video calibration videos on our YouTube channel or at audioadvice.com. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, click like, subscribe, and notify. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.